I've done C-sections and delivered pets, and then I'm there at the end. We wish they were like tortoises, or an African gray that lives, 75 years, or a tortoise that lives 150.
Hello, and welcome back to the LFA Purpose Podcast. I'm your host, Father Leo Armbrust, and in each episode, we explore what it means to live a life of purpose by listening to people who actually live theirs. Our podcast features guests who embody what it means to live with purpose, people who have allowed their passions to guide their path. Today's conversation continues this exploration with our guest, Dr. Stuart Fox, who found his purpose in healing animals through compassion. He's a dedicated veterinarian whose care brings health and healing not only to animals, but also to the people who love them. Dr. Stuart Fox is the owner of Riverbridge Animal Hospital and Laser Therapy Center here in the West Palm Beach area. From a very young age, he knew caring for animals wasn't just going to be a profession for him. It was a calling. And so over the years, Dr. Fox has cared for countless animals. But what makes his work so meaningful is how he also touches the lives of the people who love them. What makes Dr. Fox stand out is that he reminds us that healing is not just physical, it's deeply human. For those of you who are listening and watching today, 6 years ago, I went to this good doctor's office, and I looked on the floor and I saw this little French bulldog. It's white, tan, and I said, "What's her story?" And the people in your office said, "Well, she's up for adoption, foster, whatever." And they gave me her name, and I don't even remember it. She'd been hit by an automobile, and for some reason she had difficulty in some of her bowel movements, strain and stress, and I always found it very difficult to her. And under your direction, I was given a prescription for a laxative to help her with that effort. Well, she was my little girl, and so at night she always wanted a little tummy rub. And this past Saturday, I was feeding my other two kids, who are Sir Walter Raleigh, he's an English bulldog, Marcus Aurelius, which we talked about briefly in the last discussion, and I was going to feed Princess Leila. That's her name. I named her Princess Leila. So I looked down and I couldn't find where did Leila go. And I looked everywhere. I started running around because it was time to feed the three of them, and that's not unlike her for her to go just to vanish. So I went out in the backyard, and first thing I always do is I look into the pool. And previously, the day before, people who had come to cut the grass left the gate open. She ran out. A neighbor brought her back. So I anticipate that somehow she has escaped again. So I get in the car and I start driving around the development which I live in. And I was gone, calling her name. I got in the car, in and out 2 or 3 times. Overall, it took over an hour. I came back to the house thinking, I've lost her. I can't find her. I did around the perimeter of my property, and I looked and looked, and I came back to the pool. And for those of you who are listening and viewing this, I know you may think I'm exaggerating, but in my particular line of work as a priest over the years, I've seen things I cannot explain. And Saturday was one of them. As I coming back to the house, the back of my house, I have this French door that's all glass. And I looked in and I could see her sitting there. And so I immediately ran in and I looked down and she was gone. And then I said, oh no. I walked back out. I looked down into my pool and there she was in the bottom of the pool. Well, I want to tell you, I have never screamed so loud in my entire life. Now, this only happened this past Saturday, and this good man here, and I just genuinely can't thank him enough, because not only is he an outstanding, excellent veterinarian, he's one of the kindest, most understanding and empathetic human beings I've ever met. Because that's why I think it's so important in the field of healing, whether it's humans or animals, that I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. And so the first phone call I made was to his office. He wasn't even working. And so he came over and he took her body and he took her away. I have been sobbing for days, and we actually planned this podcast before this happened on Saturday. And he was kind enough to say to me, do you want to postpone this or reschedule it? And I said, no, I want to go ahead with it because the emotions are still real and raw. And for any of you out there who are watching and listening, know what it's like to lose a pet. The grief and the sorrow is so deep and so immense, it affects every relationship you had. Time stopped for me in many ways on Saturday. And the trauma that I felt, because I get attached to my 3 dogs, and it was so incredible that I reached out to people. And this individual was one of the first people I knew would respond to me, because I know the kind of person he is. Not only is he skilled in his profession, he's also what I consider to be a saint from the standpoint of his virtue, from the standpoint of all the values he manifests and the way he treats his clients, and especially his patients. So I had to tell that story, and I want to thank you, publicly for being the kind of person you are.
It was a horrible day. I was glad to be there for you. But it was an accident.
I've struggled with that because I've taken upon myself a lot of responsibility. How could I have neglected her this way? Or why didn't I look in the pool more carefully? A whole host of questions. And in my line of work as a priest and all the people I've helped who transition from this life to the next, death has never really stunned me or shocked me, or I've been recoiled in front of it. But with a pet, it has been different because I've had the sense, Dr. Fox, that when you have that level of control over whether something lives or not, it's an awesome responsibility. And you have had, I don't even know the terminology that you can use, to take 3 of my pets and, no, it's now, 3 of my pets and send them to over the Rainbow Bridge. Tell me about that.
Well, it is part of their job. I cannot think of how many clients have come in and said that their child wanted to be a veterinarian, or the client themselves said their first choice was to be a vet, but they just couldn't put a pet to sleep. It is part of it. We don't want to suffer. I think until you have a family member, and we've talked before about family members in hospice suffering, and we just let people suffer. And to make a decision for a pet because you do love them so they don't suffer anymore is something I'd like to help with. As a veterinarian, we're the pediatrician, and we're there at the end as an internist.
That's amazing. Most people don't think about that. You're here from their birth to their death.
And I've had that where I've done C-sections and delivered pets, and then I'm there at the end. We wish they were like tortoises, or an African gray that lives, 75 years, or a tortoise that lives 150. Our small animals, they just have to...
See, I would think this would be one of the most difficult aspects of your work, putting a pet down. But you've had to do that 3 times with me. The first one was Alexander the Great. He was an English bulldog. Then there was Miss Molly Malone. Miss Molly, I also rescued her from your organization. Mm-hmm. And then most recently, Cyrus the Great, my second English bulldog. He was 11 when he passed. His brother, who I still have, Sir Walter Raleigh, will be 13 this September, which for analogously a human being might be 83 or 90 for a human being. Bulldogs don't have that.
No, we've always used the expression, you've done very well. Everybody comes in and says, I want my pet to live forever. It's hard to live forever. You talk to people in their 90s or people in their 100, they're tired. They're, people.
It's amazing that you say that.
It's not the quantity, it's the quality.
I have met a lot of people who just say, I'm tired. And that level of empathy I think we have to understand for some people is they've run the race, they've fought the good fight, and now it's time to go on. And I think there's some people that are much more, how shall I say it, accepting and understanding of what awaits them. And the fear of dying begins to evaporate. With pets, if we could develop that same attitude from the standpoint of we can't allow this particular animal to suffer anymore, and letting someone go is the most difficult thing for anyone to do, whether it's your member of your family, a relative or friend, or it's your pet.
It's the quality of life, not the quantity. I always ask, if they could talk right now, what do you think they'd say? And most of them say, "You're right."
Well, you
no
had
more
to do,
harm.
you had to do that with me with my first pet, Alexander the Great. I had 5 years, 4 months, and 11 days, and his cancer was so advanced. Remember, he turned blind, and then you looked at me one day and you said to me, "How long are you going to let him suffer?" And I realized those were the most important words you can say to me, because I did want him to live forever. And I didn't want to bear the pain of seeing him leave. Tell me, I'm one of those people that I can't watch you do this. I can't watch you take this life. Well, I shouldn't say you taking it. That's not right. I can't watch you doing this procedure. Let me put it to you that way. How many people can do that and how many don't?
Oh, that's a very good question. I would think most people stay. We obviously give people an option. Some people just say their goodbyes on their own and leave. And, we have a process on how we do that. I don't know if there's not a study or something like that. Some people just drop off. Some people stay. There's different ways of doing it. We can sedate the pet and then they can leave. Then we can perform the last injection afterwards. It's their choice whether or not they want to be present. Asking me, I would say be present. Be there. There is I believe it's on hospice. It's called 5 Wishes, and it asks at the end, do you want somebody with you? Do you want somebody to hold your hand? Do you want the sun coming through the window? Do you want the shade down? And it's different ways of passing. With pets, do you want to be with them? Do you want to hold them? We allow people to do anything.
You see, this is exactly what I think. The topics you and I have had in our first discussion about this and today is so evident about human existence and our values and our virtues, because you just raised some very important elements that all of us in the latter stages and moments of our lives, who wants to be alone? Who doesn't want someone holding their hand? Who doesn't want someone either reading to them? The fact that they don't want to die alone. They want someone just to be with them. Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right, because I never thought of that for that animal. And all of a sudden for that animal not to see me I've never been able to do it. As you know, I cry just buckets. So I can tell you that it still would be very difficult for me to do that. I would try, but you might have 2 messes. All the ones that I could make on the floor and whatever else I might do that would.
Well, it's your own decision. It's throughout my career, it's always, if this was your dog, what would you do, Dr. Fox? And I tell them, I would want to be there. I would hold my dog. I would hold my cat. I would let them know I was there. Some people, as yourself, cannot be there. There's people I've talked to actually just recently who didn't go to family members' funerals because they just couldn't be there.
Oh, I do know people that cannot go to a funeral at all. Their fear of death and the loss of someone that's been a part of their lives is so severe, so incredibly momentous for them that they almost paralyzed. They can't go to a wake service, a funeral. No, very few of them can even go to the cemetery later.
Well, we have, as you know, we have like a separate room for that. We have lights, we have candles. it's a horrible thing to have to go through.
I will tell you this. With having a pet, they have only so many ways to communicate. And you can tell their mood and temperament visibly. Much easier sometimes than you can see with human beings. Like, what mood are you in? How was your day? Their mood, for the most part, is always uplifting. It's always something filled with energy and excitement. As you said, like in our last episode, when you come home, or the exhilaration of when they hear the sound of the cookie jar or the treat jar being rattled, and the next thing you know, they're right beside you. Or when you want to go to a room to be private for a moment, they're sitting right beside you, looking up at you. Well, St. Francis of Assisi, is his feast day is on October 4th. Traditionally, churches open up all kinds of ceremonies for people to bring their pets for a blessing and a prayer of St. Francis, who had such a way with animals. That a lot of people to this day would like to emulate. And I would see a lot of veterinarian clinics with statues of St. Francis either inside or outside. I don't know how it really, whether it motivates them to, whether they see that statue or not, that St. Francis is going to be inside, but hopefully when they meet you, they will find him.
Thank you.
So in all this time, we've been talking about the importance of people today when they get in relationships with animals. It can be one of the most important relationships they can develop later in life. And I really like to focus on people who, in their latter years, feel alone. They feel separated. They don't get the phone calls or the correspondence they once did. And they're looking for something so that they don't die alone. They don't necessarily live alone. And it doesn't, as I always say, if you're not busy living, you start being busy dying. And I think that as we all get older today, we do need that level of companionship. There's something that provides us.
Well, as you just said, in our society today, things have changed. People have a lot of distractions. And what's better to come home to a fish or a dog or a cat?
And who doesn't talk to their pets?
It's a problem if they answer you.
Yes, that's exactly right. But I think of all the times when I would come home and those dogs would be so happy to see me. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm not that far away from them. Now that I'm retired, I spend a lot more time with them. And whether it's the tummy rubs or the scratching them or whatever it might be, just feeding them, all those things. The bond that you build with those pets is indescribable.
Well, I think the business world knows, if we build carriages and for dogs to go in strollers, and Starbucks knows that if they make, Star Pups?
Yeah.
They make desserts for dogs for people to go through drive-through.
Pop cups.
Pop cups, that's what it is.
Pup cups.
Pup cups.
So you can go, and
there are dog bakeries out there that they bake different types of cookies. So
we shouldn't apologize.
We know how to celebrate our pets.
We shouldn't apologize for the amount of time, the money, the effort that we devote towards these pets, because they give us so much back. And we've talked about the responsibility it requires, the companionship it affords, certainly the financial costs that are incurred, and also the opportunities, not only with your organization, but with others out there that are looking for individuals who might just want somebody to spend time with. That requires them to only look into it, check it out, and see what becomes of it. So one more time, your organization
is A Second Chance Puppy and Kitten Rescue. It's not just me, it's many other fine people involved.
What would you say, as we conclude here today, what would you say about to people that would be most important if they're considering a pet, things that they should be aware of in terms of the preparation for looking and finding a pet?
Well, the time. Do they have the time for it? Do they have the finances for it? Are you going to be home for that pet?
That's a good one.
If you don't have the time, maybe a cat is better. You don't have to worry about having somebody come in, to walk a dog. But there are organizations now that you can hire to have them come to your house once or twice a day and take your dog for the walk.
Also, yeah, not only the time that you're going to be there, but what about the size of the house as it pertains to the dog?
Well, that's part of doing your research. Do
Okay.
you want a high energy dog? Do you live in an apartment? You don't want a Great Dane on the third floor. You have to pick the right breed for you.
That's good.
Or a cat.
That's good. And so it would not only be your time, it would not only be the location, any other elements
Just
that you think?
finances. Can you afford a dog or a pet?
That's a good, yes. I think people have to be realistic about that because
Yeah.
you never want to get into a situation where you overestimated your ability from the standpoint of what time you had, the place the dog or cat was living in, and most of all, whether or not you could afford it. Because the last thing you want to do is have to give the pet back.
Well, we have a new resident in my office, and his name is Pickles. And Pickles had some health things going on for a couple of weeks, and the owner was like, I think I'm just going to have to put him to sleep. And we did not allow that, and she signed Pickles over to me, and now Pickles is one of our kitty residents at Riverbridge Animal Hospital, and we got him back on his paws, and he's doing...
What kind of dog is he?
No, it's a cat.
Oh, it's a cat.
The orange
Pickles.
cat. And he's doing this perfect.
I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, anyone out there that really is thinking about having a pet, the first thing you want to do is what we went through. First of all, number one, do you have the time? Secondly, what kind of place do you live in? What kind of place will the dog live in? Can you afford it? And then, the most important investment that's attached to number three is finding the best veterinarian possible, the best care it's going to receive, because it will need its checkups. It will need its vaccinations. It will need all those things. And if something, pray God, it doesn't happen, is ever serious, you want to make sure you already have a relationship with that veterinarian. Never wait to build a bridge you have to cross.
And that's a good point. Last week we had probably 2 or 3 new people who, one was they came back after 8 years, but they just wanted to get reestablished again, and other clients that moved from Georgia. But it's a good idea to get established, like you just mentioned, just so you don't have an issue, because practices are very busy now, and to call last minute when you have a problem, you may end up having to go into emergency clinic. So it's good to have some kind of rapport with somebody.
And I think that most importantly, when there are emergencies, because if your office isn't always open, you have to have some kind of vicinity, in your vicinity, emergency situation.
You have to have a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
The emergency clinics, I recommend if your pet, if it's looking like you need to make a decision in 10 to 15 minutes. But going there, you could be there, I've heard, 4, 5, 6 hours. And
at 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah. And again, the cost. You are going to be hit with different charges than you would see in private practice.
I think of all of this, what we've been talking about is what pets do for us and what they teach us about ourselves. This is what all of this is about. The level of responsibility that we owe a pet is not too dissimilar than what the responsibilities we owe to each other. What did we just talk about? Do you have the time? Do you have the right place? Do you have the resources? And I think those measures, the standards for evaluating a relationship or whether or not you can have a pet, go into determining the partner or spouse or person you want to do business with or spend the rest of your life with. What am I bringing to this?
Sure.
What are the consequences of my investment? What are my expectations, desires, wants, or needs? And I think the more people are honest and realistic about that, the better pet owners they're going to be. The relationship is going to be so much more vital and exciting. It won't be just something that's an obligation or a duty.
Well, the shelters are very busy. The rescues are very busy for the people who don't make those decisions ahead of time that you've been discussing.
Yeah.
Did they have the time? There's many circumstances, but the surrender rate is very high.
And we could say this on any level. There is a cost attached to every relationship, be it human or animal. We can't avoid that. And the costs are not only, as we say, the time, the money, the effort, all of that. But there's another cost too, when one day we lose them. And we know how much we love somebody by the way or something or some pet by the way we grieve for them when they leave us. But love is meant to be something that you give, not just take.
Right.
And I will never forget, you had a member of your staff one time when I was so sad and depressed about losing Alexander the Great. She looked at me and she said, "It's not all about you." I never forgot that. And being a pet owner, it's not all about me. It's what I bring to them too.
Yeah.
Stuart, Dr. Fox, thank you not only for being my friend, not only for being the best veterinarian for my kids, but also for your time and your effort here today.
You are quite welcome. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Good luck and God bless.
Thanks.